Gone with the Wind is, adjusted for inflation, still to this day the biggest film of all time, according to most sources. It is one of the most controversial films probably ever, especially nowadays. It had a total reevaluation in the 21st century. However, for the time, it broke in like basically every record there was. It broke records for the box office, it broke records for the Academy Awards, and it, to this day, as I said, is the highest grossing film of all time. And boy, is it long. And we're going to cover it today on the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. It is Gone with the Wind. Oh boy, I obviously have no idea how long this episode is going to be because we are only just dipping our toes into it. But trust me, we are going to try and keep this as concise as humanly possible while still delivering some form of analysis. And when I say we, I'm referring to obviously myself and of course my co-host, not guest host, Shane Mulvaney.
How you doing, Harry? Let's crack on and I think get on to this mammoth of a film.
Yeah, it's enormous, and its reputation obviously precedes itself. Probably like I can't think of many films, especially for like actors and directors in all of Hollywood, that has a bigger reputation than this. Maybe the Godfather. That's it, really. Like, as far as actors and directors go, Gone with the Wind has like probably one of the biggest reputations ever in Hollywood.
Of a certain generation, for sure, it's the film. Like, it's literally the film that you would have grown up hearing about. Obviously, I'm sure you watch it from an early age, and it's one of those films where, again, if of a certain age, you've probably seen this thing dozens and dozens of times in the way that we would.
Somehow.
A more recent film, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because even for the time, the near 4-hour runtime was actually a point of contention for people even back then. A lot of reports say that was the biggest criticism of the film at the time, was its lengthy runtime. And obviously, as we as humans have grown up a bit, we've also realized that there is more than just a runtime issue when it comes to this. Not to get too political, but the whole Confederacy thing, and I believe, isn't it called the Confederate Lost Cause myth, where essentially the Confederacy made it out as if the American Civil War was because the Confederates were just being heroic and honoring their Southern pride, when in fact it was because they were trying to keep slavery as a constitutional right for white people. And then, of course, the inevitable race issues in this film. It's a funny one because, ironically, this film actually, when it comes to the Academy Awards, am I right in saying Hattie McDaniel's the first ever African American person to ever win an Academy Award, or is it just the first African American female? I think she's the first African American person.
I think person, yeah, as far as I can read up online, she's the first to be nominated and obviously then win. So she created history in both categories, obviously, yeah.
Yeah, she receives a lot of stick from the black community for her role here. And yeah, she was pretty vocal about being like, you know what, this film actually kind of changed my life and I don't regret it. So, each to their own. But yeah, this is a film that is set in the South, and it literally premiered in a time when the Jim Crow laws were still a thing in the South. So when it came to the premiere in like probably the most Gone with the Wind fashion ever, it was like the biggest movie premiere in the history of cinema, but none of the black cast were allowed to attend because it was in Georgia, where a lot of the film is set, where the Jim Crow laws were a thing. So Clark Gable said he wasn't going to attend, and Hattie McDaniel allegedly had to actually like sit him down,
talk him into
and convince him to attend it because, well, Yeah, you would have been in a lot of trouble, shall we say, had he not attended. But obviously, for me personally, the biggest issue with the film, when it comes to that, is the character of Prissy. She's not even necessarily a big character, but to quickly agree with Malcolm X on the podcast, yeah, Prissy as a character is one of the most excruciating things I've probably ever seen in cinema because of how the character is written and because of what the character is supposed to be and how degrading the character is, especially for the actress who's got one of the fucking coolest names in cinema, may I add. Butterfly McQueen is the name of the actress who played Prissy. And yeah, that character in particular is like legitimately hard to watch.
Yeah, yeah.
However, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, Prissy, degrading is exactly the word that I was thinking of when I was watching the film. It's very problematic depiction. Like, it's hardly alone in the problematic depiction of a black person in the film, but especially the character of Prissy. The film polarized a lot of African American communities, apparently. But most people kind of fell down on the side of it is very racist, and it's, again, like you said, it's perpetuating this lost cause myth that it's completely trying to rewrite what the Civil War was about, which is obviously trying to put an end to slavery, where it's pretending like that wasn't the case at all, and they're heroic people just looking out for kind of American liberties and stuff like that. So yeah.
Yeah, it, as I said at the start, it broke in numerous records. Interestingly enough, when it came to the Academy Awards, it obviously was nominated for and won the most Academy Awards in history at the time. Gigi replaced it, 20 years later? Gigi was late 50s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So 20 years later. It was, at the time, the second most expensive film ever made, with a budget of over $3 million, replacing Ben-Hur, which ironically, it was then replaced by Ben-Hur, which came out in the 50s. However, with that near $4 million budget, the film, at the time, made nearly $400 million. When you're talking profits, Gone with the Wind may be up there for the most insane film profit ever. And it was interesting enough as well because, like, as expensive as it was, one of the reasons as well was because of how many people were sacked and the fact that the film was in pre-production for 2 years because David O Selznick basically refused to start filming until he got Clark Gable, but Clark Gable wasn't free. He actually had George Cukor as the director for that 2 year period, and then 3 weeks into filming, he sacked Cukor and replaced him with the eventual director, Victor Fleming, which was a point of contention on set because although Cukor and Clark Gable did not like each other at all, I think they hated each other for the rest of their lives, actually. The two female leads, Olivia de Havilland and Vivien Leigh, both really, really, really liked working with George Cukor and allegedly even went to David O Selznick's office and begged him to keep Cukor. But Clark Gable,
apparently Vivien Leigh
had a lot of sway at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Vivien Leigh apparently was meeting up with Cukor on the sly now and then, trying to get.
Yeah, I think de Havilland was as well.
De Havilland as well. So clearly he still had his post. There's actually a third director we should mention that apparently Fleming was he was under the weather and he was kind of being drained by the long shoot. So he was kind of given a few weeks off, and this guy called Sam Wood came on and kind of took over the directorial reins for a few weeks before then Fleming came back. So Cukor and Wood are uncredited directors. Fleming is the only credited director, but it should be said, just because they're uncredited, it shouldn't obviously take away the fact that they are a part of the most profitable film of all time, certainly the highest grossing film of all time when you adjust for inflation.
Yeah, and like, it's Gone with the Wind. There's so much trivia to do with this film, whether it be the pranks that happened on set, or the fact that Hitchcock was involved in a scene, or the fact that the leads, Vivien Leigh and Clark Gable, Vivien Leigh didn't like kissing Clark Gable in all the scenes because apparently his breath was rancid because he had false teeth, and because he was a smoker. But she actually, I'm pretty sure, smoked more than him during the film. So look at yourself in the mirror, Vivien Leigh. retrospectively. Also, Olivia de Havilland outlived all of her co-stars by like so much.
She only died
like,
recently, didn't she?
Yeah, she was 104 when she died.
Yeah, I think she only died like
and,
about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe.
I think it was more recent than that.
Was it?
Actually,
Yeah.
funnily enough, I remember Nathan Hale, who was on the podcast once, did a top 10 video of her best films when she died, and I feel like that video wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel like we're rambling. I don't even think we bother with a spoiler-free review. It's Gone with the Wind.
It's Gone with the Wind.
You'll either watch it or you won't. The 4-hour runtime will either put you off or it won't. We'll review it at the end. We're just going to get straight into this mammoth of a narrative as concisely and as quickly, but as cleverly as we can. As Tom cleverly as we can. So basically, at the start, two lads try to smooth talk Scarlett, and they do so in a really weird way, somewhat expositionally. They just basically reference the looming war and the fact that this local lad Ashley, who seems to be a point of interest for Scarlett, is marrying his cousin, which apparently isn't strange. She runs off after this brutal attempt at flirting from these two lads, and Scarlett is played by Vivien Leigh, and Hattie McDaniel's character Mammy kind of pokes herself out the window and gives out to her for running off on these two lads. It also should be said, Hattie McDaniel, she won the Academy Award. She actually won it over Olivia de Havilland, who was also in this film. But again, in typical Gone with the Wind fashion, groundbreaking, an African-American woman wins an Academy Award. She wasn't allowed to sit with her co-stars. She had to sit in the furthest table down the back by herself throughout the Academy Awards. So if you're thinking, God, Gone with the Wind was super racist, actually most things were. It was just a fucking horrible time. A lot of racist things going on, particularly in the film industry. And unfortunately, it would pretty much be the case for like another 30 years until Hollywood started giving African American people basic human rights. Obviously, there's other examples and outliers and stuff. Night of the Living Dead, for example, but yeah, even that was late 60s. Anyway, Mammy gives out to Scarlett for running off from these two lads, and Scarlett goes over to her dad, Mr. O'Hara, who is from Tara in Meath, which I ran up the hill of Tara multiple times last week as training for my upcoming half marathon, which sucked, and hence the name of their house, Tara, a fictional plot of land, Tara.
Yeah, no, Scarlett's basically just upset that Ashley's marrying someone else. When she finds out, she's quite upset when she hears about this. But Mr. O'Hara says that, look, land is the most important thing in the world because it lasts. He's trying to drill that into her throughout the whole film, and it's probably a lesson I think it's fair to say that she would go on to take.
We get a subplot that literally goes more or less nowhere. A fella called Mr. Wilkinson gets told by Mrs. O'Hara that his baby has been born and has died. It goes that's that subplot. Done.
Yeah, it looks quite hard back then, I suppose. that's one way of conveying that. It's a bit grim. Didn't need to be in there, but anyway. Yeah, so then we get kind of a couple of scenes then of Mammy kind of just ordering the house staff around, so we're kind of getting clued up on the fact that she's basically in charge of kind of running the household, even though obviously she is a slave. And Scarlett decides then to tell Ashley that she loves him, kind of declare undying love for him. So she gets dressed up, and Mammy's still then being kind of being stern towards her. She's trying to kind of persuade her not to do it, but then she's just giving her some advice then about what to do, and in quite a stern way. But then it's still unsure at this point whether Scarlett's actually taking on board what Mammy's saying or not, because she is basically she is a slave, and she's talking obviously her one of her.
The only thing I'll say when it comes to the character of Mammy is I think you could replace her with anyone else in this scene and Scarlett probably still wouldn't listen to them.
Yeah, that's true.
I think so. For me, Gone with the Wind at its core, I don't even know if it was intended. No, it surely was. Gone with the Wind for me, I think the satisfaction in Gone with the Wind is that it is one of the most epic hate watches in cinema, Scarlett, our lead character, is legitimately one of the most detestable characters in 30s cinema,
Incredibly
and she
unlikable.
is the lead character. So Gone with the Wind, it kind of depends on how you're going into it. I knew prior that Scarlett was meant to be a shitty character. Therefore, for 4 hours, I must say, I thoroughly enjoyed watching her life fall apart. Thoroughly.
Yeah, no, I was aware of the fact that obviously the character itself is polarizing. May not even be the word. I think most people just don't like her, flat out don't like her. But
Yeah, the
that is
consensus is
also
that. Yeah.
that is also clearly the point, because I mean the film is it's not exactly setting her up to be kind of heroic. But yeah, like full disclosure, I didn't like the film. It's one of the reasons why it's Scarlett, but there's also a few other reasons why. Look, I will say clearly, like I said, it's it does a good job of what it wants to do, which is it wants to kind of depict Scarlett in not the most flattering of lights, but yeah, even still, I think your lead character needs something to just something could be anything to kind of for you to try and identify with, and I was struggling throughout to find that with Scarlett really for myself. So yeah.
I think we have a lifeboat situation on our hands again.
Yeah, it could be. No, again, I have no issue whatsoever with unlikable characters. You could have, like, I mean, some of the best gangster films of all time have, like, just top to bottom filled with unlikable characters who you want to see get their comeuppance. So I have no
Have you
issue.
seen Once Upon a Time in America?
No, I haven't.
Whoa. Whoa. It's similar to Gone with the Wind. You want to talk about a long, epic film spanning decades where the main character is scum of the earth. Oh, if you, as a matter of fact, if you like Gone with the Wind and you like gangster films, you have to watch Once Upon a Time in America. Like, they go hand in hand with each other.
Yeah. Oh, I definitely want to check it out. But again, it's not like I need a likable character. Like you could be filled to the wall with unlikable characters with absolute dipshits. It's more about the intention and then the execution. So clearly the intention is Scarlett's meant to be unlikable. She's meant to be very, very self-centered and selfish. But again, the execution comes across. I just didn't really like it. And again, there's other reasons why I didn't like the film. That's just one reason. But again, yeah, that it's just, again, like I said, I don't want to hammer home the point, but I don't need my characters to all be likable, to all be heroic. I just need something then to identify with. Even if I don't necessarily like the person, I need something to identify with. And I was struggling with Scarlett throughout, really.
Yeah, I feel like maybe it's my years of watching Love Island that have just kind of got it into my head that hate watching stuff sometimes can be enjoyable.
Imagine Scarlett in Love Island.
Oh,
She'd either
fuck! She would make a killing. She would be so rich after that show.
she'd either win the whole thing or else she'd get kicked out after 4 days.
No, she'd be one of them people who is in it for the whole thing, but they can't possibly have her win it, so she has to come second. But she still gets all the brand deals. Anyway, so we have this big ball at, I want to say, Wilkes Manor, and yeah, basically we meet Olivia de Havilland's character, Melanie, one of my favorite characters in the whole film, and basically it basically begins. Melanie is. We find out towards the very end of the film that she's probably not as naive as she's maybe portrayed at the beginning, but she kind of comes across quite naive because she is very nice to Scarlett, and Scarlett very openly fancies her fiance. And so Scarlett basically plays the room, she flirts with everybody in an attempt to make Ashley jealous. It fails. We also see when she's going up the stairs after even those two lads from earlier try to have a second go at Scarlett and fail miserably, that there's a man now at the bottom of the staircase. Rhett Butler. Great name for a character, must be said. And this guy, his reputation precedes him, to be honest. He's a bit of a scoundrel. He's from Charlestown. He's absolutely loaded. And in typical 19th century, I guess, political fashion, because he has so much money and kind of plays around with women, he is the center of attention pretty much in every room and scene he's in. He is a scoundrel.
Yeah,
He's a scoundrel, is Rhett Butler.
Someone literally calls him. Someone literally says that he has a terrible reputation. So that'll tell you there.
Yeah.
So then Ashley and Melanie then start to speculate about the possible war that's coming. Mr. O'Hara says that they must, quote, defend themselves against the Yankees, who are obviously the people who are against the Confederates. And then they're then just talking about the fact that there's more than likely going to be a civil war on the horizon. And Rhett says the Yankees are better equipped for war, which starts to offend the other people, but really he's just being kind of pragmatic about the whole situation because he can kind of see what way the wind is blowing, I think.
And as far as I'm aware, I don't know if Charlestown was meant to be further north or if he was just further north in general and he had just come from there. But he basically has ventured out of the south, unlike basically every other man in this room. And he has taken it upon himself to be like, you guys are all total fucking idiots.
You're on the wrong side of
this. Go to war with the North. You're all going to get shot to shit, actually.
Yeah, like
but they don't like that.
Well, he is like a Confederate. He agrees with their kind of political stances or but he's just being more pragmatic about the fact that, look, this is going to go one way and it's not the way you guys want it to go. That doesn't ingratiate himself with the locals, I don't think.
Yeah, and then Scarlett, after this meeting with the lads, tries to pull Ashley aside for a chat. And, she tries to swoon him again, kind of slags him for marrying his cousin. Doesn't work somehow. And Ashley, again, turns her down. I'm good. Although, to be honest, Ashley is one of the less likable characters for me. And one of the reasons is the fact that no, I don't feel sorry for Scarlett in any way, shape, or form. But Ashley is also a bit of a coward throughout the film as to how he deals with her and how he essentially does lead her on for the majority of the film. Now, as a avid hate watcher of Scarlett O'Hara, do I enjoy it? Yes, but again, as a character, he is a total coward for how he navigates that melodramatic relationship. And she gets quite angry when he leaves the room, and she throws some sort of ceramic thing, a statue, against the wall, and it smashes. And good old Rhett Butler was also in the room the whole time. He was conked out on the couch. And this is the first time these two characters meet properly. And Rhett basically kind of fills us in on his morals. He's not a gentleman. He doesn't believe in the whole being a gentleman thing. He doesn't think it gets you anywhere. And he also basically says, you're also not a lady, so don't fucking pretend you are. Ooh, burn. And for some reason, Scarlett doesn't take too kindly to this. And when she leaves the room, a timid fella, who actually allegedly the actor was like a legit hard man in real life and hated every second of playing this character. Apparently he was like legitimately like a proper tough guy and he hated every second of playing this character. But this total fucking wimp basically comes over and he's obsessed with Scarlett and he pretty much begs her to marry him. And we see that Ashley and Melanie have kind of gone off with each other and war is also about to be declared. So she just accepts. She's like, fine, I'll marry you, mate.
Yeah, and then they're at the altar and she starts crying. So I think she's immediately regretting her decision to marry this
big
Charles.
time.
Yeah, and then we get a letter about Charles. So he didn't last too long at war. It seems that he's died of pneumonia during the war. So then Mrs. O'Hara and Mammy.
I love, sorry to cut you off, but I love in the letter that they try and insinuate that he was a hero. Again, like it's one of the funniest things in the film. This guy is literally just such a fucking loser.
Yeah, no, he's not killed in action. He's not killed in action. He doesn't get like what their version of a heroic.
He just got sick.
He just got sick. He just got a bit too cold.
Like before the war even fucking started, he just died. He just got sick and died.
He didn't.
I genuinely laughed out loud. It was probably. I feel like it was an attempt at comedy, and I feel like it was executed well. It was fucking hilarious that this guy is just such a loser. But yeah, he dies.
Probably was meant to be funny. It probably was meant to be funny, but like there's an earnestness about the whole film, which again you could probably take or leave. It didn't work that well for me in certain moments, but I didn't really read it as trying to be funny. I read it as trying to like pull on the heartstrings at that particular moment because obviously she's just lost.
Oh right.
She
Yeah,
just
I don't
lost her
know.
husband. No, it could be.
I thought, yeah,
It is funny though.
I thought this was, yeah.
If anything, it'd
I
be
thought
like
this was like an
unintentionally
attempt at
funny.
like Scarlett's. We're gonna. I was like, this is 4 hours. We're gonna make Scarlett's life as miserable as possible. So we're gonna couple her up, kind of like Love Island, with the most forgettable loser ever, and just kill him straight away.
It was funny.
Like that's the first knife in Scarlett, and I loved it.
Yeah, so obviously she's not doing too well at the moment. So Mrs. O'Hara and Mammy start to comfort her. And Mrs. O'Hara said that Scarlett can stay in Atlanta with Melanie. So Mammy knows that she's planning on kind of stealing Ashley away. So she's not too happy about that, obviously. So then at the ball, then they're showing support for the Confederate soldiers who are still at war. And then Rhett Butler is there, and he makes a speech, and he notices Scarlett. So she and Mrs. Wilkes give their wedding rings around as a donation to kind of just to raise some funds, probably for the lads at war. Yeah, for the cause. And Rhett then teases Scarlett that he knows she didn't really love her husband, so like why even give him that? Or maybe you're right to give that even more so because it didn't mean anything to you. Which obviously again further offends her because they didn't get off on the right foot maybe in the first point, and this is another example of that.
Mm-hmm. And they also do a real dated thing where there's a surprise auction for all the women in the room. Basically, whoever bids the most can take whatever woman in the room he wants home. So, of course, mega loaded Rhett Butler outbids everyone for Scarlett, and she's like, you know what? Fine. I'll go home with you, fine.
$150, which is a hell of a lot of money back in the day. Yeah. So he really wanted that dance.
Yeah, big time. And that's it. He also pretty much lays it on the line straight away that he clearly, if he's not in love with her, he's definitely taken an interest in her.
He's taken with her, yeah.
And again, don't know how you read this scene, but I thought it was hilarious. This is definitely an attempt at comedy, which also made me laugh out loud. Immediately after this scene, Melanie and Scarlett receive a letter from Rhett, and Rhett writes this big soppy paragraph about how great Melanie is and how he managed to track down her wedding ring and return it to her, and he's covered the cost of the donation. And Scarlett's like, oh, is there anything there for me as well? And it just says, P.S. Scarlett's ring's there also. It's great. Yeah, great. Good man, Rhett. Keep her on her toes.
She's not exactly getting on everyone's good books at the moment, I don't think. But then Rhett then buys an expensive dress for Scarlett, and he starts to flirt with her. But then he realised that she still has very strong feelings towards Ashley. So that situation's not over yet. And then we cut to the Battle of Gettysburg, which is probably the most famous battle. It's certainly the one that I would know the most about from the American Civil War.
Yeah.
That rages on. Locals search for info on casualties from the war. Turns out that Ashley is still alive. A lot of casualties, yeah. It was a bloodbath, really. But turns out that Ashley is still alive, which Melanie is pretty relieved about, but also so Scarlett. She doing a bad job of hiding the fact that she's still clearly in love with this dude, but she is relieved about the fact that he's obviously still alive. And then Rhett laments the South, that basically he says, look, we're living in the past here. Look at all these people who have died because of this war that we're clearly going to lose. Like I told you just from the start, we're going to lose this thing. All these people didn't have to die, so he's in a bad way. He's not too pleased about the whole situation.
No, and then fast forward a little while after, it's Christmas time, and Ashley has made it home for Christmas. He is still alive. And what does Scarlett do? She kisses him. Bitch. And she runs off. But again, Ashley's also a bit of a bitch in this situation too. And that's pretty much Christmas. The Confederates then really start to lose the war. And we get one of the best shot sequences / scenes in the film for me. Basically all of what happens in Georgia next. I think it's shot really, really well. Particularly one of my favorite shots in the film is they have had to transform this church into a hospital, and we cut to the priest who's literally giving someone their last rites, and you can see in the background the stained glass windows. And then like a bomb goes off and loads of the stained glass windows just shatter everywhere. I think it's a really good shot. There's loads of really good shots here, to be honest. And yeah, we just find out that Scarlett is an incredibly selfish, immoral bitch, because whilst all these people are dying, she just can't get over how gross it all is, pretty much. She actually recognizes a guy, Kennedy, who is an important character for later, and she just leaves him to it because they're demanding. She's a makeshift nurse, pretty much, and they're demanding that they need a nurse in the room because they need to cut a guy's leg off because he's got gangrene. And again, typical Scarlett fashion, she goes in, she's freaked out by the whole thing, she just leaves them to it. And she actually just walks straight out of the church stroke hospital. And yeah, it's one of the most selfish moments of the film for Scarlett as a character, as they are clearly in need of nurses, and she's just fed up. She's just fed up of serving people. It's actually it's unknown how long she was even in there. She may have just been there for like 10 minutes, who knows. But yeah, she abandons her post.
Yeah, and when she abandons it, we cut outside, and then there's slaves carrying weapons, singing, and then they're walking the battle. So yeah, they're clearly getting these slaves. The whole point of the war, obviously, is to end slavery and to abolish slavery.
Yeah,
and they're still kind of using them to to keep themselves under the thumbs, so to speak. But then Rhett picks her up and he tells her that they belong together since they're so similar. They have similar outlooks on life. She says she'll always despise him, but he just laughs because I think he knows at this point that she's running out of options. Obviously, Ashley and Melanie are very much together. Speaking of which, Scarlett gets roped into helping Melanie deliver her and Ashley's baby. She protests, but she eventually agrees, and she's not too happy with the whole situation again. Melanie's in a bad way, and she asks Scarlett that if she dies, she says, look after the baby for me. Scarlett, actually, it's one of the few moments where I'd say that she does cover herself in a bit of a good light, because she is concerned about Melanie. She doesn't actually want her to die. I mean, she obviously wants to steal her husband, but she is trying to be helpful towards Melanie at this point. So she runs into town to find a doctor that obviously Harry just spoke about. And then there's this sweeping shot then as she's looking for him of like literally...
Probably the best shot in the film.
Yeah, literally hundreds, if not thousands of wounded or dead Confederate soldiers. Again, just laying down how much the human casualty was of this pretty needless war.
Yeah, it must be said as well, two things. One, we also learn whenever we see the slaves going out to dig the trenches that Mrs. O'Hara, her mom, is dying at home. And also, unfortunately, this is one of the scenes, this is the main scene when Scarlett goes to get the doctor, where Prissy's character is just hard to watch. Basically, she's written as the most incompetent, useless idiot in the world, and Scarlett berates her, says that she'll sell her, stuff like this, and I think it's meant to be played for laughs.
Yeah, it is. That's the problem with it as well. There's also a scene from a little bit earlier where at Christmas when Ashley had returned home, there's a scene of a male slave, kind of told to go out and get a chicken for the dinner, and again it's very caricatured. He's clearly played for laughs, clearly meant to portray this guy as unintelligent, as a buffoon, as someone that you shouldn't have any kind of emotional kind of attachment towards, or you shouldn't like this guy. Like, there's a few scenes like this obviously sprinkled throughout the film, and but as we said at the start, the portrayal of Prissy, the depiction of Prissy is it's the worst on a long list of racist depictions, unfortunately.
Yeah, and so Scarlett basically finds a doctor, and he's like, "Do you see how many dead bodies are around you? I'm pretty busy, actually. You may deliver it yourself. Delivering babies is easy." So she goes back, and again, Prissy is... she gives this line where basically the reason that Prissy is there with them is because she, for some reason, tells Scarlett's auntie that she has delivered plenty of babies in her time and she'll happily stay with Melanie. But then when it comes to delivering the baby, Prissy is incompetent and says she doesn't know anything about delivering babies and she doesn't know why she said that in the first place. So Scarlett pretty much does it all by herself. She delivers Melanie's baby, and then again, it's so Gone with the Wind. We have this horrendous racist scene, and then we have one of the most fascinating scenes in the film where the Yankees, as they call them, have breached Georgia, and they are coming. So Prissy has to go and get Rhett, because Rhett obviously is mega loaded and can get them out of there in a horse and cart, because Melanie is incredibly sick in delivering her baby, which is an important piece of information for later, may I add. So Prissy eventually manages to get Rhett, and Rhett evacuates these guys out of Georgia in, again, one of the most amazingly shot scenes of the film. It looks incredible as Georgia is burning to the ground. Interestingly enough, two things. One, they burned down a lot of old Universal sets, like actual sets in the background. One of which was the Great Wall from King Kong, from the 1930s King Kong film, which is a great film if you haven't seen it. And two, do you know who was in control of all the explosives? Because he didn't want anything to get fucked up.
Clark Gable.
David O Selznick himself, and it was the first thing that they shot, because he said that if the burning of Georgia went wrong, they were probably not going to film anything else, and if it went right, they would continue ahead, because it was the most difficult thing to film.
It's like Mission Impossible, the last Mission Impossible film. They shot the cliff. Did you see the stunt where basically Tom Cruise drives a motorbike off?
Yeah.
So basically, that's the very first thing they shot on day one. And Macquarie said, "Look, if he's gonna die doing this stunt, it's better happens on day one than if we fucking spend millions upon millions of dollars, beforehand." So I guess there is a logic to it, and obviously, Selznick, we know, is a bit of a control freak, as probably most big producers are. So it's probably not the worst thing in the world actually that he decided to kind of assume the responsibility for himself.
Yeah, it looks absolutely incredible, and some of the cinematography then between now and the next while is pretty breathtaking, to be honest, as they travel back down towards further down south, and Rhett has them all in his carriage, and then he stops the carriage at a crossroads. Bit of symbolism there, because he has decided that he is going to join the Confederate Army. God damn it, Rhett, you were likable at one point. And no, so basically,
I don't know about likable.
Yeah, you know what I
mean. Somewhat like identifiable.
Yeah, and no, basically, he says he has a thing for lost causes, which on the surface is clearly like, oh, you're a lost cause, Scarlett, but I fancy you. But also, it's the whole Confederate lost cause myth, and he abandons these women in the middle of nowhere.
Literally the middle of nowhere. There's literally buildings on fire all around them. Like, the place is a hellscape.
And he's like, I got to join the army like now, like right now. So see you guys, which is actually kind of funny. And they eventually get back to Wilkes Mansion, and it's absolutely destroyed. So they go back to Tara, and Mr. O'Hara opens the door. He literally looks like a zombie. And Mammy informs us that Mrs. O'Hara died the night before. She was a day late to her mother's death, and Mr. O'Hara, he's quite crazy now. And again, one of the best shots in the film, just before the intermission, the "As God is my witness, I'll never go hungry again," is this big, enormous panning out shot as Scarlett basically decides. She makes a decision for herself. She will never be poor again. She is going to make it her life's mission to financially get back on her feet. Intermission.
Yeah, 5-minute intermission. That is, by the way, by far the most breathtaking. I mean, the cinematography is the best thing about the film, I think, and that's that image, which you also, I should say, is the same image as at the end. So they kind of reuse it, but absolutely breathtaking stuff. It's an incredible shot. This is actually a good point too. So a lot of people, the first half of the film is it works better for them than the second half. But for me, actually, I don't know why. We'll talk about obviously the second half now shortly. But I think I identified more with this Scarlett in the second half of the film than I did first. Just in the sense that she clearly has a mission that she's trying to stick to. She's a bit more what you would identify within a protagonist, which is she has a plan, she has a mission. her tactics aren't always kind of likable or kind of something you can always root for, but like she clearly just has a plan that she decides to stick to, and she decides to obviously pursue, and she's pretty unapologetic about it. So I suppose from that point of view, I didn't enjoy the film, but I probably enjoyed the second half of the film a bit more than the first. What do you think about it?
I do think the second half is stronger from a psychological point of view. I think where the film takes particularly Scarlett, Rhett, and Melanie is far more interesting than the first half. I actually think it's really interesting how this incredibly toxic relationship between Rhett and Scarlett begins to form. And as you said in the last episode, we go over a period of decades pretty much throughout this film. But like as the time goes on, particularly in the second half of the film, I think it's psychologically really interesting where it takes these characters. Because while the first half, yes, you have the Civil War and many people are dying, as far as the main characters go, the stakes don't feel
Very
incredibly
low.
high, except for maybe Melanie.
Low.
Melanie, I guess, could die at any point in this film. But when it gets far more personal and far more within the confines of like they now have to deal with what happens after the war and how it's affected their lives, I think that's far more interesting. I think the stakes are way higher for all the characters, and I think I actually think it's really good. So for context, I don't know if enjoy is the word I should use, but I think Gone with the Wind is one of the most impressive feats in early Hollywood ever. Well, early Hollywood ever. I think it's one of the most impressive achievements in early Hollywood. I've no intentions of rewatching it anytime soon. However, I do think as a film, it is a enormous achievement. And also, as I said, through watching reality TV, my brain is now like geared towards hate watching stuff sometimes. And hate watching Scarlett is thoroughly enjoyable, especially towards the end. I certainly won't say that this is anywhere near like my favorite film of all time. God no. But I think I certainly admire the achievement that this film made. However, politically, it is not for me. Fuck no. Is this in any way where my political views are in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, and then so the second half of the film, then we see like a lot of blazing fire. So clearly the war is raging on, and indeed title cards tell us that the Great Invader marches on. Again, quite incendiary language there, really, about the Yankees.
Yes.
Turns out that Tara has survived to face what they call the famine of defeat. And Scarlett then strikes her sister for saying that she hates Tara. Mr. O'Hara tells Scarlett that she's handling the slaves poorly, so clearly Scarlett's in quite a violent kind of angry mood with the fact that they really have no money, and they're struggling big time now as a result of the Civil War.
Mm-hmm. And we also learn that, right, is this the same Wilkinson from earlier? Because this guy's called Wilkerson. I wrote down that the guy whose baby was born and died was called Wilkinson. I may have just written that wrong. But a guy called Mr. Wilkinson has shown up, and basically he is now in charge of the place, and he has raised the taxes, hence somewhat raising the stakes, because as we can see, the land is already going to shit. The house is a mess, and now this man has come in and basically said, life is actually going to be a lot more expensive for you all, even though you're all super broke. Which, again, is one of the first steps in making these characters go to a far more interesting place than where they were in the first half. And Mr. Kennedy from earlier, he asks if he can marry Scarlett's sister because Scarlett is pretty much now the man in the house because Mr. O'Hara has absolutely lost his fucking marbles. And she's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, I'll marry her whenever I get financially back on my feet. He basically says it's his life mission now to get himself back on his feet financially, and he'll do whatever he can to get in that position. And she kind of fobs him off. She's like, yeah, sure, whatever. You don't really think much of it, but he does become a somewhat important character later on. And Ashley returns again from war and again half-heartedly rejects Scarlett. Yeah, it's like anytime she seems to do anything kind to Melanie, she then has to be a horrendous person straight after.
She just needs to take a hint at this stage, doesn't she? Like, Ashley,
Big
how
time.
many times now is this guy need to turn her down? But again, as you said earlier, he is kind of leading on. I think he's enjoying the fact that she has these feelings towards him.
Yeah.
So he turns her down, but not as emphatically as he could, for sure.
And yeah, yeah. Obviously, we talked about scenes earlier that were played for jokes and were funny. I don't think this one's meant to be funny, but I laughed my fucking ass off. Basically, Wilkerson shows up and wants to buy Tara, and Scarlett is like, absolutely not. And he's like, well, just you wait and see. I'll price you out, no problem. Just you wait and see. And he kind of heads off on horseback, and out of fucking nowhere, Mr. O'Hara just snaps. And he's like, get off my land, you Yankee bastards. And he gets on the horse, and he chases after them, and he hits a fence, and he falls, and he fucking dies. And it is so funny. It is absolutely hilarious. He does this hilarious... It actually happens one more time in the film, but that's not funny. He does this hilarious stunt fall where he kind of like dolphin dives off the horse and lands like on his chest, and then that's just a smash cut into his tombstone. It is so hilariously timed. I don't think that one was meant to be funny, but that was absolutely fucking hilarious.
I agree on both points. I laughed my head off, and I also don't think it was supposed to be funny at all, because it's obviously a very serious thing. Her dad's just died. Her mad obviously died of short beforehand, so. But yeah, it's the way they shot it, and exactly what you said, like the kind of the quick cut to his tombstone. Again, I don't think it's meant to be funny at all, because it's this somber kind of dark moment. But especially if you're not a fan of Scarlett or her family,
exactly,
it's pretty funny.
Thoroughly enjoyable hate watch. But yeah, so Scarlett kind of realizes financially they are mega fucked now, because not only has this guy raised the taxes, he now also wants to buy their land.
Yeah, and then Rhett plays cards in jail, so he's landed himself in the clink for whatever reason. And Scarlett arrives for him. He says he's being threatened with execution for theft, basically. And he realised then that she's been lying and that she wants something, because she had turned up to ingratiate herself in his good books, and she was acting a lot more kind of nice towards him than she usually would. So he realises that she wants money. It turns out $300 for the taxes that the overseer wanted. Excuse me, that's what she wanted, and he tells her she isn't worth $300. That's quite a nice sentiment there, right?
Yeah.
She's obviously pissed with him then, because her plan goes up in smoke.
May I say though, ironic that he paid $150 for her earlier.
Yeah, that is true. So yeah, she's worth 150, but she's not worth 300.
Yeah, Christ no. Don't be insane, Scarlett.
And then Scarlett notices former slaves being promised land and the right to vote as free men. So the nation is obviously changing, and I don't think she's too pleased with the situation. Just because obviously what she thinks she needs slaves for the upkeep and to get herself back. But obviously it doesn't look like there's going to be as many slaves knocking about as there were previously, which again, because of where she's from, she's not too pleased about. Nope. So she visits her brother-in-law's shop, and she manipulates Frank and steals him from her sister. Quite nice. Basically in order to secure her future. So that's her new plan towards getting her family back on their feet, towards getting Tara back to where it was, and secure her own financial future, really.
Yeah, and this Frank, Mr. Kennedy, has also suggested that he has a side thing that he's not really putting that much effort into, like a timber factory or lodge or whatever, or mill, a timber mill. But it's just a side thing. And instantly she's like, oh, shit. So that's her thing now. So we then, over time, she takes control of the timber mill, and she also then goes into business with both Ashley and the Yankees, which is not received very well. So she starts to mistreat all of her staff. Shock.
Yeah, and then Rhett appears back in her life, and they exchange the usual unpleasantries. They're not too happy. They're not too fond of each other, clearly. And Scarlett gets ambushed while she's riding. Sorry. And it's only Big Sam, who is still a slave, I think, at her plantation, who obviously, or maybe he isn't anymore.
I think he's been freed at this point because they were all on a big campsite. So I assume once he was freed,
I hope
he became he just started living in a campsite.
Big Sam clearly still has some affection towards Scarlett and her family. Whether he should or not is a different question, as I said. But yeah, he promptly gets rid of the assailants, and he saves Scarlett from a pretty diabolical fate, I'm sure.
Yeah, which she kind of deserved, but here we are.
Yeah, and then Frank then goes to a political meeting rather than staying comforter, which she's not too happy about, much to her chagrin. And then Rhett arrives, and the other women seem to think that he's a Yankee spy for some reason. Maybe they've heard something in the grapevine. Melanie tells him though that he wants, basically, she wants him to save Ashley from a trap, or he wants to save Ashley from a trap. And then the Yankee soldiers arrive, and they say, look, they're looking for Rhett and they're looking for Frank. Mm-hmm. So they think they're involved in some shady business, but they say, look, they're obviously not here, so we're going to wait outside until they come back because we need to talk to them because we think they've been up to no good.
And God love him, this is the scene that Hitchcock did a full treatment for and presented a full storyboard for, and they used literally none of it. They used not one thing that Hitchcock suggested, unfortunately.
They should have got Salvador Dali on the case.
Yeah, fair.
That would have been a trip.
That would have been a great twist.
So they come home and it looks like they're drunk. It looks like they've had a few jars. The officers then want to arrest Ashley, but Rhett says, look, he's been with me all day, and look, he hasn't been in a political meeting. Where he's been in a brothel. So the officer apologizes for the mistake, and when they leave, we realise that Ashley's after being shot, so he's in a bad way physically. And Rhett tells Scarlett that Frank's been shot dead. So clearly some shady business the lads have been getting into some shady business, and they haven't actually been at a brothel. They've been up to no good. It would look like.
It's one of the characters. One thing about Rhett is he tends to treat the side characters well, and one character in particular is this character called Belle, who runs this brothel, and as far as I'm aware, they actually did stop by Belle's to get him treatment, and then they obviously took him home. Because straight after, Melanie then goes outside and thanks Belle for taking in her husband to basically try and help him survive. But again, the Scarlett hate watch goes on because this horrible bitch doesn't even react when she finds out that Frank is dead. She's like, oh, but what about Ashley? Is he okay? And like Ashley's like in the room in front of her. And I was like, bro, your husband just died again.
Yeah, no, it's she's now a 2-time widow, and I don't think she shed a tear for either one of those husbands.
Yeah, and she goes into mourning, and pretty much immediately, finally, I guess, agrees to marry Rhett. Because Rhett lays it all on the line. He's like, I can make you mega rich. I can look after you. I can spoil you. Whatever. I know you don't love me, but like, it'll flourish over time or something. And he kisses her, and she's kind of like, fine, I'll fucking marry you. And then
she literally turns him down firstly, and then it's only when he keeps pestering her, she's like, fine, I'll marry you, but I want a diamond ring.
Yeah. And then they go and
she has her priorities in order.
Yeah, they go on a honeymoon then to New Orleans, but again, somewhat interesting bit of mirroring that happens here with what happens later on in the film. She begins to really enjoy herself over there, but then over time she starts developing nightmares and becomes really homesick and really wants Rhett to take her home. And they do go home, and then the next thing we know, all of Scarlett's family have finally come to the conclusion that she is in fact a horrible bitch, and they all hate her now, all of her sisters. And Rhett and Mammy have gotten quite close. They're now besties. And Scarlett, oh yeah, she's having a child.
Yeah, Scarlett's up to duff. So she basically she hires the house slaves from the plantation. So they're back now working for her, and yeah, they have a baby. So with the help of Melanie, they end up calling the baby Bonnie Blue Butler, which I don't know how I feel about that. That's a wacky name.
Bonnie Blue Butler.
That's literally
Yeah.
like why you'd see someone like a fucking celebrity nowadays.
Yeah, I suppose they kind of were celebrities with Rhett.
I guess, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, weird baby names.
So then Scarlett tells Mammy she won't have any more babies. And she looks longingly at a photo of Ashley, and she tells Rhett, that she doesn't want any more kids. And he accidentally steps on the photo of Ashley. Rhett's pissed off at the whole situation. She's still pointing over this Ashley guy. So he threatens to divorce her. And then he kicks down the door and he throws a glass against the wall and storms out. So, yeah, all's not well in the Butler household at this moment in time.
And yeah, the next time that we see Scarlett, she gets caught embracing Ashley by India, who is Ashley's sister, who also fucking hates Scarlett. We're seeing a trend here, guys. Meanwhile, Rhett and Bonnie are clearly very close. Clearly, he's just devoted his whole life to becoming a father now. He gets her on he gets her a pony. She seems to take an interest in that sort of stuff straight away. So he's like, I'll make sure that you become like the best horse girl in the entire South. He'll give her whatever she wants to basically make that dream of hers and his come true. And whenever word then gets round that Ashley and Scarlett were caught in this embrace, again, it's certainly the beginning of when the film gets... Keep in mind, we're like 3 hours in. This is where the film, like, psychologically gets like really interesting, I feel, from here to the end. Because Rhett, he's not happy, and he handles the next couple of scenes really interestingly. So basically, he goes up and she's like in bed playing the victim, as if like this rumor that's gone around about her is this horrendous thing. And he's like, Melanie has invited us to a party. You're fucking going. And you're going to get the public humiliation that the audience want you to get, pretty much. It's pretty fourth wall breaking. It's like, you are finally going to get your comeuppance, whether you like it or not. And he makes her get changed and stuff, and they go to Melanie's house because Melanie's having this big party. It's someone's birthday, and they open the door, and he just says, he takes a step back when the door opens, and he just says, the lions are hungry for you. And he just leaves her to it.
Scarlett's obviously pretty nervous about how Melanie's going to treat her because, she's obviously news travels fast, and she's obviously going to have heard about the fact that she kissed Ashley. But Rhett says that Melanie is too honourable to conceive of a friend betraying her. So basically, that she's too nice of a person to even think that's something that could even be true. So Rhett then tries to basically strangle Scarlett and physically intimidates her. He tells her that he knows she's been faithful to him because Ashley is a gentleman, but he isn't. So he carries her upstairs ominously. This is after the party, by the way, when Melanie does end up kind of hugging and kissing Scarlett on the cheek. So
yeah, because they say that India didn't show up at the party. So at first it's insinuated that, India didn't show up. Melanie doesn't know. But then Rhett's like, no, she definitely fucking knew. She's just too big of a person to publicly shame you, which you deserve. Yeah,
exactly. So, I think Melanie's done Scarlett a solid, but Rhett's not happy at all, and it would look like something really bad's about to go down because, he wasn't acting too nice towards Scarlett there in the last scene.
Yeah, he clearly wanted her to get her comeuppance, like we all did, and he takes her upstairs. And it's alluded to that they have some angry sex because the next morning, Scarlett is fucking delighted.
She's over the moon. She's literally lying in bed.
The most
she's
insane
really
makeup sex ever, pretty much.
Rhett literally apologizes for his conduct, and then he says they both made a mistake. And he says, look, we need to get a divorce. So I don't think Scarlett's... I don't think she's too happy at this point because she just had, like you said, mind-blowing sex, and then she wakes up to this news.
Yeah. He wants to divorce her, and he's also just taking Bonnie with him. He's like, also, I'm taking your child and we're going to London. See you later. And they go to London, and yeah, Bonnie loves it at first, and then the nightmares start happening, and she gets homesick. And also, one of the maids is like horrible because he's like really concerned for her because she's like screaming at night. And the maid's like, no, if you just leave the child for a day screaming, they'll just get over it. And he's like, that's fucking terrible, actually. I'm not going to do that. So he takes her back to Georgia. And yeah, they get back and discover. Oh, fuck, this bit feels kind of Hitchcockian. Scarlett's pregnant again.
She's pregnant again. Yeah, she tells Rhett that she's pregnant and he's the father. And then he teases her by saying that maybe she'll have an accident since I know you don't actually want the baby. She tries to hit him, but then she misses and she falls down the stairs. And yeah, it's pretty obvious what just happened. She's obviously she's miscarried the baby.
Yes.
And Rhett blames himself then, and he starts to basically hit the bottle. He starts to really start to drink his sorrows away, and he blames himself. And Melanie tells Rhett then that Scarlett's much better. This is obviously a little while later, but he hates himself for what he said and what he did. So she says, look, she'll forgive you. She's your wife and she'll forgive you. And he hints that she loves Ashley, but Melanie tells him that he doesn't believe it, or she doesn't believe it, sorry. And he says, look, you're a really kind person. And yeah, it's clear that he has a lot of respect for Melanie and how she conducts herself throughout this whole film. Yeah. She acts quite a nice, much nicer manner than his own wife Scarlett, and he appreciates that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, she also lets us know that she's going to try for another baby, which, if you all remember from the last time she did that, was a close call for her. And, so Rhett basically goes out to Scarlett, who, this whole time while she was in hospital, was actually calling out for Rhett in her sleep. So it's kind of alluded to that maybe, subliminally, deep down, maybe she does like Rhett. She certainly doesn't fucking act like it, but maybe she does. And she's kind of recovering then outside one day, and Rhett goes out and basically just wants to have it out. He just wants to have the open conversation of, I feel terrible for the whole thing. I'm very sorry. And she kind of, sort of, maybe forgives him. She's not typical horrible Scarlett. But then right in front of them, Bonnie falls off her horse and dies.
Yeah, so that happens.
Sorry.
No, continue. It's not. It's quite abrupt, which is why we're obviously not
so abrupt.
Kid dying, but it's so abrupt
out of nowhere.
It literally just that's it. It happens out of nowhere because they were literally just talking.
Fucking Peter Griffin dive off the horse. She just goes face first with her arms behind her back.
Because Rhett was literally just talking about how he wants Scarlett to sell the mill, or else give it to Ashley because he basically wants her to stay at home and to kind of to raise the kids. If they do end up having another kid, he basically wants her to raise Bonnie and or the other kids that they have. And they start to argue then, but then, Bonnie, as Harry just said, Bonnie, she falls to her death unfortunately, and Mammy's distraught. She begs Melanie for help, and they leave a while later, and Melanie faints, doesn't she? So it's Melanie who faints, isn't it?
Yeah, so Mammy kind of gives us a bit of context. Let's ramp up the ending here because it's the culmination of this Scarlett hate watch. Scarlett has basically told everybody that it's Rhett's fault that their daughter died because he bought her the pony. So Rhett, who was distraught, killed the pony himself, took Bonnie's dead body, took her up to the nursery, and has locked himself in there for 2 days because he's pretty much having a psychological break. And in fairness, who wouldn't in that situation? Although, there's ways of doing it, right? And Mammy's just telling all of this to Melanie, and Melanie's like, right, okay, I'll have a conversation with him. And again, Melanie, who is just like a really interesting, kind character in and amongst all of this hate watching, manages to talk her way into the room. And not it's what he's alluding to or anything, but she kind of talks Gable's character down from the ledge. One of the most interesting things and one of the most genuinely poignant things in the film is the reason that Gable doesn't want there to be a funeral and he doesn't want her to be buried is because she was having nightmares in London because she was afraid of the dark, and he doesn't want her to be buried because she's afraid of the dark. That was like legitimately like, ooh. I can imagine a 1939 cinema goer weeping at that scene. But she manages to convince him to let the funeral happen. And as she comes out of the room, she collapses. Because, yeah, she is with child again. And, yeah, that's...
yeah, she's in a bad way.
Beginning of the end.
Obviously. So then, yeah, we see that Melanie is starting to, obviously, yeah, she's not doing well. She looks like she doesn't have long left. And her son starts to obviously cry because he's about to lose his mother. So Scarlett and Rhett then visit her, and Rhett tells Scarlett that she's stronger than Mellie. Scarlett then goes in and visits Mellie. And again, she's being quite kind to her and nice to her at this moment. Same as she was earlier when the childbirth scene was kind of hit and miss for Melanie. But yeah, Mellie tells Scarlett, please just look after Ashley and our son. So she says, yeah, I'll do that. I think it's pretty obvious at this point that that Melanie is fully aware of Scarlett's feelings towards Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not the jealous type. She doesn't get jealous about the whole thing because she's probably just comfortable in her own skin. She's comfortable in the fact that she has the family, and
so she doesn't says, look after him, but also remember to be kind to Rhett.
Yeah, exactly. So easily the most likable character in the film, Melanie. Mm-hmm. And this is the last time I think we'll see her. So that's a shame.
Yeah, and then Scarlett comes out of the room, and they call Melanie's family in, her sisters and stuff, because she is about to die. And when she comes out of the room, Scarlett goes straight to Ashley, which Rhett is like, oh, man, fuck this, and he just leaves. So fair. From here until the ending is like peak Rhett. But anyway, she says to Ashley, your wife gave me her blessing, pretty much in so many words. And he, in so many words, says, my wife is fucking dying, and I'm never going to love you the same as I love her. So straight away...
She's still trying to shoot her shot.
Yeah, still. There's a time
Ashley's wife is on her deathbed, and she is still trying to shoot her shot.
Yeah. So Ashley... He's probably too overcome with emotions to really turn her down, like, as in, like, fuck off, my wife is dying. Yeah. But he does it in a way where he basically, he's like, my wife is dying. Real, My wife is dying, and she was my entire life, and nobody will ever eclipse her, including you fucking moron. So Scarlett realizes, oh my god, Ashley doesn't love me all of a sudden. So she goes home to Rhett, and in legit one of the most satisfying moments, I'm not even messing, in one of the most satisfying moments in probably all of cinema. It's one of the most famous lines in the history of cinema, and I literally even though I knew it was coming, I cheered as he said it. She begs Rhett to stay, and she's like, what will I do? Where will I go? And he turns to her and he says, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I literally did the DiCaprio meme, pointing at the screen.
The whole film. I know you didn't like this film, but the whole film is literally building up to that line. Yes. And the delivery, the timing, everything that happens, especially in the second act that builds up to it, is so perfectly paced, building up to that one line and the swell of the music. And I was like, fuck yeah, that was class. And
it's
then,
so good.
Yeah,
but Scarlett, to Scarlett, to her credit, she still give up. She still doesn't give up. I mean, she then starts to basically go into
determined little bitch.
Yeah, like she then says that she'll go home to Tara and she'll find a way to get him back, and they'll be together again. And she's persistent. We've seen throughout the film how she treated Ashley and how she treated Rhett now. She is persistent. You'll have to give her that. But yeah, so then we get the stunning final shot that we just saw before the intermission as well.
Yeah,
the music starts to swell, and then that's the end. That's the end of Gone with the Wind.
Yeah, so we're gonna have two very different reviews. I'm gonna say something insane, I feel, and I actually need to rewatch this film. But Gone with the Wind for me was similar to watching Jason X, which is the 10th Friday the 13th film where it's set in space. Because although you know that what you're watching often isn't how it's probably meant to come across, it's still, whether it's the unintentional comedy or the intentionally beautiful cinematography, or if I'm honest, I enjoy a good melodrama. I do. Parallel Mothers, Pedro Almodovar, good film. Would recommend it. Very melodramatic. Yeah, this film, I probably like it for all the wrong reasons other than the cinematography. I thoroughly enjoy watching Scarlett's life fall apart. And for me, the frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn line is like, without question, one of the most satisfying lines in the history of cinema. It's delivered perfectly. It's built up to perfectly. It is the whole fucking film. And a lot of people's criticisms of the film is actually that it lacks the icon, other than that line, it lacks like iconic dialogue or iconic scenes or anything. But you do have like legitimately maybe the most iconic line in cinema other than "No, I am your father." Like, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. It's perfect. It's an absolutely perfect scene. Watching her finally get her comeuppance, and to be honest, I genuinely think, and I think this is also how Rhett feels in the situation, I actually felt more satisfied that Scarlett got her comeuppance and her rejection alone in a big empty house with no one to love her, rather than like in front of a big crowd like at that party. It was far more satisfying for her to finally just get straight up rejected and comeuppance, totally isolated, totally alone, where she should be, with absolutely nobody. I thoroughly enjoyed that. That's where the film ended. I know it's like based on a book, but shut up. But yeah, I have to say, Gone with the Wind it's a milestone in cinema. It's one of the most dated milestones in cinema. Probably only second to a film that I don't think we'll probably ever cover, Birth of a Nation. If we ever cover that,
I don't want to cover that.
yeah, fuck me. Yeah, probably only second, which at the time, prior to this, was the biggest film of all time.
Yeah.
It's probably, yeah, as far as films like that go, probably the second most dated milestone in cinema. Yeah, I gave it 4 stars. I think the melodrama, the cinematography, the ending, contrary to popular opinion, I didn't really feel the 4-hour runtime. It definitely felt like a long film, but it didn't feel like 4 hours. Similar to Zack Snyder's Justice League, which I think was a similar runtime.
About 4 hours.
Yeah, I didn't feel like 4 hours, probably because the intermission. Pro tip: if you're watching a long film with an intermission, just like make lunch during the intermission, and then yeah, it just flies by. But that's what I did, and yeah, I think Gone with the Wind is so fucking hard to talk about. Shane, how do you feel about Gone with the Wind? It's particularly hard to talk about when you like enjoy the cinematography and like some of the pacing and some of the melodrama. It's like so fucking hard to talk about because like there's so much wrong with the film.
No, I like what you said there about like it clearly is a landmark film, not just because it's the high grossing film, but it's one of the most famous films in cinema history. So I really like the cinematography. The production values are pretty great. Some of the performances are great. I like Olivia de Havilland a lot. I do like Vivien Leigh's performance because she's doing a good job of what she's supposed to be doing, which is
the author of the book co-signed her performance. The author of the book said that's exactly how the performance should have gone.
Yeah, exactly, because she's not meant to be someone who you root for and who you identify with, and she's clearly meant to be a very self-centered, very selfish person and character. Clark Gable, there's moments where, I mean, clearly one of the incredible line delivery for Frankly My Dear, I Don't Give a Damn. And there's some other moments that I like, but then there's also moments where his performance isn't maybe what I would have wanted. Overall, I think My biggest issue with it, like clearly there's massively racist moments sprinkled throughout, which isn't great, which is a big
Yeah,
problem.
not ideal.
I think
Not ideal.
it's not ideal at all. But if you look at it from the point of view of like it's trying to be a historical document for maybe what life was like in that time, who knows? Like I'm not an expert on this period of history. I'll be honest, but it's more so the fact that I saw a Letterboxd review. I don't know who it's from. Sorry, but someone basically said that it's like it's kind of dishonest in how it portrays like clearly this whole lost cause myth. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's definitely just as accurate as a criticism as any kind of racist, outwardly racist moments, because it's trying to put across this narrative that the Civil War was because you have these plucky underdogs from the South just trying to kind of keep a way of living that's been going for centuries going, and they're not doing anything villainous, and it outright depicts the Yankees at times as being like basically mustache twirling villains, which again I don't know if that's the case. Maybe in certain aspects, I don't know, but clearly like what they were fighting for was more identifiable for what the values we hold in the 21st century, let's say. So just from that point of view, it doesn't comment at all on like the pros or cons of, well, there are no pros obviously, but on the kind of the status of slavery, and it doesn't mention at all that the reason this civil war was going on was because they're trying to abolish this like incredibly sick thing that was going on at the time. So yeah, look, I can enjoy the film from a production value standpoint, and like I said, the two kind of main female performances of Vivien Leigh and Olivia Havilland were great. There's some really great shots, like I keep saying. But overall, I did feel the runtime. I have to say, it doesn't need to be 4 hours long, this film. And I say that as someone who really enjoys, whether it be a TV binge watch of doing 4 or 5 episodes at a time, or doing like really long films like any of Scorsese's last films in the last kind of decade. Like there's few things in life I love more than sitting down for 3.5, 4 hours and like just bailing into something when you have the time. That being said, I'll never watch this film again just because, what I've just said, I didn't particularly enjoy it, and also the runtime. It's 4 hours that felt for me well over 5 or 6. So yeah, look, it's one of these films that's quite polarizing. I think people are either going to like it, or really like it, or really dislike it, and I'm in the latter camp, to be honest with you. But that's not to say it is one of a landmark, as you said. It's a landmark film in cinema history, and I am glad I watched it, if not for no other reason.
Yeah.
Dan, I'm happy that I could check it off the list and see what the whole debate's been for obviously decades upon decades now of cinema history. So yeah, it's not for me, and there's lots of things I can nitpick, but there are also things that I did enjoy and things that I did take from the film, and overall it's gone with the wind. I mean, you're either, like you said, you either know if trying to go in, you already either know if it's going to be for you or if it isn't. So I had the suspicion that it wasn't going to be for me, but again, that's not to say I'm sad about having watched it, because I'm not, because there are things that I did take from it.
Yeah, just before I wrap up, I do think there's definitely something to be said about both of us preferring the half that has literally nothing to do with the Confederate War. It's so much more interesting when it's just a human melodrama. The second act is way better than the first. Anyway, that was Gone with the Wind. I reckon we'll talk about any films we watched recently in next week's episode, because this one's already fucking long enough. And next week's episode, on this coming Friday the 13th. Oh dear God, jump scare, Hitchcock's back on the podcast. It's
Don't
Psycho.
worry, it's not the start of a new Hitchcock arc, but it is probably his most, would you say his most probably famous film? I think it's the film where when I tell people about Hitchcock, like Psycho is the film that they're like, oh, is that the guy who did Psycho? They won't mention Rear Window or Vertigo or North by Northwest or any of these.
Yeah, it depends on the age. I feel like maybe because when I first said that we were starting Hitchcock to a couple of people who would be a bit older than myself, they'd be in their 30s, 40s. They were like, "Oh, he did Vertigo." I was like, "Ooh." Yeah. But yeah, no, Psycho's definitely his biggest film. Legitimately one of my favorite films ever made. Same. I can tell you that much. I've watched it close to 10 times now. I watch it most Octobers. It's if you haven't seen Psycho, please God go watch it. It's amazing. It's so
Please watch it before.
It's so fucking great.
If you're watching this episode and you happen to have stayed till the end, which thanks very, very much for that. But if you haven't seen Psycho,
whoever you three people are, we really appreciate the support.
But if you happen to, for whatever reason, maybe you have a good reason for it, but maybe you've been living under a rock for the last however many years of your life. But watch Psycho before we review it next week, because it's one of the most famous films of all time, similar to Gone with the Wind for different reasons, obviously. But also it's one of the greatest twists in cinema history, which I'm sure it's one of them where it's so famous, it's like The Empire Strikes Back, where you can't not have heard of it. But again, just see it for yourself if you haven't seen it before, and then hearing us talk about it, because it's so much more satisfying when you watch it for yourself for the first time.
So next week, Psycho. Fuck yeah. We'll see you next week. I have been Harry Bailey.
I have been Shane Mulvaney.
And we have just talked about Gone with the Wind. Thank God we have gotten through Gone with the Wind already, because
pretty short one time. It's shorter than I thought it might be. Yeah,
we're definitely going to be sub an hour and a half. It's definitely going to be our longest ever episode, but not by that much, I feel.
No. Yeah, I'm happy with how we went in the end in terms of the runtime. So, thanks again, everyone.
See you next week.